Hi class, welcome to week 2 online where we're going to be covering chapters 8 and chapters 9. Chapter 8 is on emerging adulthood, and I'm going to go through that today in this video, and then we're going to have a video on chapter 9 as well. The video is going to correspond with aspects of the PowerPoint slides that are already posted in the modules, and so I'm just going to be hitting on some of those slides today. So we've moved out of adolescence and into adulthood. And I wanted to start off sharing this quote. This is from some of Jeffrey Arnott's research, and he was the psychologist who really brought to light this idea of having a new stage of emerging adulthood. And so she's reflecting back on what it was like when her mom was in her 20s and now what it's like when she's in her 20s. And so this is fairly a new stage. When thinking about emerging adulthood, it is for industrialized countries, and it is fairly recent. It is roughly between the ages of 18 and 25, and we're going to kind of go over some of the qualities we see in what we now refer to as emerging adulthood. So emerging adulthood, it does come from changes in our times. We are able to kind of explore some of that identity exploration that you might have seen in the teen years is now kind of transcending into emerging adulthood. And so we're seeing individuals move in and out of different living arrangements more during these times. More individuals are going to school. More individuals are kind of balancing between work and school. And we're seeing later marriage dates. And again, all of these patterns are arising from industrialized countries. So as far as like marriage rates, for example, you see the average marriage rate in the 1970s was 21 for females and 23 for males, and now still kind of not that recent, but 2006 we're seeing the average age of marriage was 27 for men and 26 for women. We see an average of individuals having several different moves. So during college and through graduate school, I had made 7 or 8 different moves during that time. Again, seeing a lot of moves from moving out of the parents' home to dorms, to apartments, to different rental units, maybe across different residences for different positions or jobs or schools. So we're seeing a lot of that change, which is leading to emerging adulthood. The next page is going to give you 8 items, and I kind of want you to pause and kind of put your responses in for these items. These items, it's an emerging adulthood scale. It should take you about 5 minutes to do. So if you would kind of go through and take the short inventory. So you are going to see a list of items. And so if you are in emerging adulthood, so you're going to think about this time in your life, and within kind of a 5-year period, and kind of rate yourselves on these 8 different items. And if you're not in the emerging adulthood range, reflect back to that time while you're figuring these items. So take a couple minutes to look through these. I'm actually going to move this up a little more, but you can see these on the PowerPoint slides. So you are going to rate yourself. So during this period of your life, would you strongly disagree or disagree that you had many possibilities, that it was a time of exploration, that you felt stressed, that you were high pressure, that you were defining yourself, that you were deciding on your own beliefs and values, that you were feeling adult in some ways but not others, and you felt like it was a time where you're gradually becoming adult. So again, just kind of mark your responses for each one. And then we're going to kind of break it down into these 5 features of emerging adulthood. So again, pause and take this and then come back. So the 5 areas of emerging adulthood, again, these are defined by Jeffrey Arnott, and these are kind of what makes up the criteria for what is emerging adulthood. So the first one is identity exploration. So again, thinking about majors, thinking about career choices, moving in and out between college and work. That's this idea of identity exploration, giving you some more time past adolescence. So that's questions 5 and 6. So you kind of see where you're rating on that. Then the age of instability refers to questions 3 and 4. So again, be looking at that. How did you respond? In this 8-item scale, there really wasn't a specific items that focused on the self-focus age, but that is one, and that is, it's a time for us. Although there is cultural differences, this is a time where you're thinking about, what do I want to be? Who am I becoming? The feeling of in between adulthood goes to questions 7 and 8, and then the age of possibilities goes to questions 1 and 2. So you can kind of see where you're at if you are in this emerging adulthood stage and see how much you agree with these different items. When we think about emerging adulthood, it is something where you're kind of feeling that in between, and so some of that is this idea of being somewhat financially independent, exploring that, becoming that, again, exploration in times of relationships, in terms of career, in terms of school, also having time to have more independent decisions. So oftentimes this is the time where you've moved out from the parents' home or accepted more responsibility for yourself. And we are seeing this is particularly for industrialized countries. And so this is just showing you, and this is also discussed in the book, but there's Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, that's that OECD, and they kind of divide countries into how developed they are. And so you can kind of see a brink with developing countries, starting with China and Indonesia and Ethiopia and Kenya, and then some examples of industrialized countries. And again, this is industrialized. You can see some of those industrialized countries are more collectivistic, like South Korea. Some are more individualistic, like the United States. And then this looks at looking at who's in college. So we can refer to college as kind of tertiary education. So that's after high school. And so who's going on to school during these times? And you can see there's a definitely distinction between the developed countries and the developing countries. And so again, we're seeing more aspects of emerging adulthood in developed industrialized countries. When we look at those countries, though, we can see differences, even within tertiary college, who goes to college, how is college funded, what expectations are there to support others in the family, supporting parents financially or parents supporting you financially. It could be in terms of cultural differences in job selection and living arrangements. Expectations for things like premarital sex and cohabitation might be different. In some places it's forbidden. And so looking at these different systems, and these different systems can again influence those aspects, those 5 criteria for emerging adulthood. Okay, so I'm going to switch a little bit now to cognitive perspectives. And so when we think about cognitive perspectives, one is looking at dialectical thought. And so this is basically this idea of perspective taking, being able to see multiple perspectives, seeing more than just the duality of true and false, but seeing that there can be kind of an in-between, and looking at all those different lenses and perspectives. And so that's this idea of dialectical thought. Another piece of cognitive aspects when we're changing in emerging adulthood, again, we talked about the frontal lobe with adolescence. We're just seeing that still being maturing. That can be cases where we could still be risk-taking during this age as well, especially if we've had this new sense of independence. But we can also make better choices in terms of now that we're living independently. Maybe we're eating well, maybe we're taking financial responsibility, and things like that. This can also be a kind of time where we're able to reframe aspects. So when we have failures, we can see them as looking at the bigger picture. We can see them as reframing, or this was just a small part of my life kind of thing. My next couple slides go through aspects of college and tertiary education. Not everyone goes to college. Those who go to college, not everyone gets a degree. We also see challenges of transference of what skills you get in college, and do you see the direct transfer to work? And that's something we're constantly working on in college education. And you do see there are differences in different social systems going through and helping with those transitions. And so some of that's talked about in your book. I wanted to talk about very briefly about career searches. One thing I'd suggest is ONET. And that's something O and then a little star net. That's really something great to show you knowledge, skills, experiences and abilities you need for different work things. And again, using this time to explore. With job seeking, I would say that you tend to see gender differences in females less likely to ask for raises and kind of negotiate pay, and that's one reason why we see gender differences. For every dollar a male earns, typically you see a woman earn 79 cents for that dollar. And so again, there's some other differences, but one of the things we see is women are less likely to negotiate. So that's my little soapbox there. Some of you might be psychology majors, thinking about careers connected to psychology. So that slide just goes over that. Again, you have this as PDF. You can explore this more. When we're thinking about transitions into adulthood, this is Levine's theory, basically looking at, again, common themes we see socially for different age ranges. And so that this slide kind of goes over that. During this is also Erickson's identity versus role confusion. Again, exploring ourselves, finding ourselves. Again, this idea of moratorium is that you've kind of explored and then you've figured out, okay, from my exploration, I'm able to see this. And we talked a little bit about this in Marsha's theory in adolescence. Also, some things to think about is it's not as clear cut, and we're going to move back and forth, and you are more dynamic, you are more differentiated. So that's things to consider when we're thinking about identity development. In conclusion, we do see emerging adulthood is something where you're able to gain more independence, you're able to take more time for your education, like you're doing now, and you're able to make some more mature decisions, again, looking at being able to rationalize things a little bit more, looking at multiple dynamic perspectives with dialectical thought, and that it's a great period of life. So it is a time to explore, give yourself some freedom, give yourself some self-sufficiency, learning how to be on your own and be independent. We tend to see depression declining during this age compared to adolescence. We see higher rates of depression in adolescence than emerging adulthood. We also see self-esteem improving during this stage compared to adolescence. And again, we have some benefits to physical function, which I'm going to talk to you about more when we get to the young adulthood. So again, we are working on chapters 8 and 9 this week. So stay tuned for your chapter 9 PowerPoint lecture. And again, I still encourage you to read through the book, look through the PowerPoint slides, and be sure to take the reading quiz and do the chapter 8 assignment and give me that book review feedback.